All right. So are we broadcasting?
Yes, we are.
Great. So I will go ahead and call the meeting to order. Let's see. This is the Thursday, September 10th, 2020 virtual meeting of the Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Commission. So can we have a roll call, please?
Yes. Good evening, Chair Noble and commissioners. Roll call. Commissioner Abbott.
Here.
Commissioner Frank. We didn't hear you. Oh, we can't hear you.
My mute's off. You can't hear me still?
No, we can. Yes.
Okay.
No, we can't.
Yeah. Okay. Commissioner Martin.
Here.
Commissioner Negus.
Here.
Commissioner Sardinas.
Present.
And Chair Noble.
Present. Great. So next on the agenda is the approval of minutes from the July 9th, 2020 meeting. Do any commissioners have any comments on the minutes? I had two things. One is that I understand that these are action minutes, but I'm wondering if it might be possible to have a tad bit more detail, maybe one or two additional sentences for some of these items. So for example, under B City USA, the minutes say the commission received the presentation and discussed the B City USA program. And I don't have my notes, but I do think that there was an interest in this issue coming back to the commission to consider as a potential work plan amendment. And so if that kind of information could be included in the minutes, I think that would be useful for us to all remember what transpired.
I think it's included under future agenda items. So it was captured in that section. Yes, we only capture in action minutes, we only capture actions, so motions.
Okay, so we can't add like a sentence or two elaborating on these items?
Then they become summary minutes, and that's not what we've been directed to do.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Any other comments on the minutes? Okay. Do we have a motion for approval?
I'll move that we approve the minutes from the July 9th meeting.
Second.
Okay. I think Commissioner Frank mentioned it first. So we'll take Commissioner Frank as the second, if that's okay. Yeah.
All right. Do we need to do roll call?
Yes. Mm-hmm. So Commissioner Abbott?
Yes.
Commissioner Frank?
Yes.
Commissioner Martin?
I was absent.
Okay. So would you like to abstain?
Yeah, abstain.
Okay. Commissioner Negus?
Yes.
Commissioner Sardinas?
Yes.
And Chair Noble?
Yes. Okay, the minutes are approved. Next on the agenda is public comment. This is for persons wishing to address the commission on items that are not on the agenda. So if you have any comments that are not related to items on the agenda, now is the time to provide them. So I'm not seeing any hands raised. City staff, do you concur that there are no comments?
Yes.
Okay, great. So we will move on then to item number 4, announcements. Staffing commission member announcements, reports, and updates of status.
Okay, so if you'd like Chernobyl, staff can start. Or
Good.
if the commission wants to, commissioners have any comments, announcement, that's, if you'd like them to start, that's fine too.
Why don't we start with staff?
Okay. So I wanted to make an announcement regarding the item that was on the council agenda last Tuesday on the waiver of fees for Ocean View tennis courts. So at their meeting on Tuesday, council authorized a waiver of the Ocean View commercial use fee for Albany fitness gyms only to conduct non-contact fitness classes according to the Alameda County Public Health Order. Like the approval of the encroachment permit fee waiver for restaurants to set up outdoor dining on Solano Avenue, the commercial fee waiver provides additional support for economic development during this very difficult time. Given that our parks are well loved and used, Council has also provided direction for the Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Commission to do some analysis to identify additional spaces that could be assigned for use by local fitness gyms and to bring the recommendation back to Council. So that's some direction that came as part of that item. And I wanted to make the Commission aware that this item will be coming to you at the next meeting. And I do have another announcement regarding the city budget. The council also on Tuesday received a presentation on the current budget projections and associated proposed adjustments for the fiscal year 2020-21. The aim of the proposed amendments is to ensure future fiscal stability. To date, administrative actions to reduce the overall operating budget include an overall decrease in professional services, materials and supplies, and non-essential trainings. In addition, there's a hiring freeze, which is in effect for all non-safety positions. And as non-safety positions become vacant, the positions are evaluated on a case-by-case basis to determine opportunities to restructure, reassign duties when possible. The Recreation and Community Services Department budget review included significant budget cuts to align with the substantial revenue shortfall due to the pandemic and ongoing city resources. The most significant reduction to the operating budget is the removal of funding for 3 full-time positions. This reduction was realized over the last 10 months by keeping positions unfilled as they became vacant. Efficient use of staff resources has also been addressed with a realignment of staff duties and integration of staff from the Neighborhood Services Division within the department. And also the, as you know, the Assistant City Manager was appointed to the Director position in November 2019. Other considerable reductions to the department operating budget due to the pandemic include cuts to special events, facilities, adult sports, youth, and contract classes subdivisions. So I wanted also to make you aware of this update that happened at the council meeting on Tuesday. And Aldi, if you'd like more information on both of the items, the staff reports are on the council calendar of their Tuesday meeting, which was September 8th. And I believe also Mark Hurley, the Public Works Director, is here and he has an announcement regarding the budget as well.
Good evening, Commissioners. So Tuesday's budget presentation was fundamentally around the impacts of COVID and how that gets managed through the budget. Public Works, we've been working on our budget the last few years, so there's actually more changes to the Public Works budget. We actually did a really realignment of our budget to We wanted to align our divisions and subdivisions to more closely match with our kind of functional areas, our functional duties. And the idea there is to provide more transparency in terms of what we do, how much it's costing, and where the funding's coming from. So at a real high level, and as Isabel said, there's lots of detail in the staff report for the presentation on Tuesday, but this just a real high level. So the Public Works Department, we're divided into 4 divisions. We have an administration division, a maintenance division, a sewer, and storm drain. Then we subdivide the maintenance division into 5 subdivisions, and they're pretty logical. And we have building maintenance, parks maintenance, right-of-way maintenance, street trees, and then we added a new one, and I'm actually real excited about this. We added a subdivision specific to open spaces and creeks. And through that, we actually have dedicated funding for those areas. In the past, it's been difficult where some of the tasks would be billed to other areas where there was funding. We've always used special revenue funding, but sometimes that didn't sit in the division. So it's really hard to figure out how much something costs. So now the idea is to, you have the structural changes where we have the divisions and subdivisions match with what we're doing. When we budget our expenses in the general fund. So you have a bottom line number of what it takes to do that function. And then we have special revenues that we transfer in to offset the general fund. So it's very clear what we're doing in every division or subdivision, what the budget is for that function, and where the funding's coming from. And long term, I want to tie this to sort of how we report out to the commission. Right now, I think you receive an annual update on what we do for open space. I want to expand that to creeks and open space and touch on more of the budget issues. We also want to do something around parks. So I think we talked about this either in the fall or last fall or the spring or the winter about coming and doing an update around park maintenance. And we want to do that. And we're still toying with what that would look like, whether it's a single meeting or 2 meetings focused on different areas. We've been tossing around ideas such as maybe do parks and ball fields or parks and play facilities. So we're still playing with what that would look like. But that's where we're headed with this. So if you're interested, we have lots of detail of the restructuring in the staff report. You can see the budgets, and I'm real excited about the new Creeks and Open Space subdivision. So that's it.
Any commissioner announcements? No. All right, so presentations. Agenda item 5.1.
Yes, good evening, that's me. I'm gonna share my screen. That's not what I wanted. There it is. Can you all see the recreation facility amenities update? You can see it? Okay. All right. Well, we just wanted to give you a recreation department kind of an overview. It's been a while and there's been a lot of changes due to the pandemic, and you know, staff is incredibly busy, but they're doing different things maybe than they had been before. And so I'll go through, I have the parks first, and then we can kind of go through, and please stop me if you have any questions, or we will have time at the end to talk about some of the details. So at Memorial Park, as most of you know, the basketball courts remain closed. The playground as well remains closed. However, the ball field is available. We're renting it to outside organizations, and fall is primarily baseball and soccer. The dog park also is open, and the hours are the same as pre-COVID, 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. Tennis courts, our current regulations are that they are open, but to singles only unless you're in within the same bubble or household. And as of September 1st, people can reserve them online as well through our online reservations. And at Ocean View Park, the ball field there is currently closed due to some sewer construction that Public Works is managing, and we're hoping that's done in the next few weeks. If you've driven by, you've seen the very large pipes that are out on the field there. Those eventually will be underground. And the playground remains closed as well. Playground and picnic area both being closed, high touch areas. So there's signage up. We've locked the gates at the playground. Caution tape has been placed around and just alerting people that it's closed. The tennis courts are open again with the same rules at Memorial Park. And as Isabel mentioned, that the fee waiver for gyms to reserve the courts at Ocean View for free went to council on Tuesday. So that will be on the October Parks and Rec and Open Space agenda for October. At Terrace Park, very similar playground, basketball courts, picnic areas all closed. Tennis courts have the same rules as the other parks. The top lot, the gate is closed, signage is posted, that remains closed. Pier Street, the park is open. However, the play structure is closed. So people can still enter and use the other areas. As far as the Ohlone Greenway, of course, the pathway and green spaces are open. However, anything high touch remains closed. So the log scramble, exercise equipment, and the loop are all closed. Then as far as our facilities, they do remain closed to the general public. The Senior Center, Community Center, and Ocean View Park buildings are all closed. The Senior Center is being used as a staging area for our central services, which include delivering meals and groceries to seniors. And then same with the Ocean View Park building, it's being used as a staging area for our after-school program there. But no kids, no public are allowed in either of those. And then as far as our actual recreation programs, our activity guide, our fall activity guide, which normally would be sent to every house and business in Albany, is now posted online, and that's at albanyca.org/home together. And we're calling it our virtual community center. So if you go online, it has our classes, our senior programs, and a whole bunch of other fun things, both our in-person and our virtual offerings. And then as we add more programs, we'll continue to update the At Home Together virtual community center site. Friendship Club is, during summer, we ran 2 3-week sessions, if you will, both with one cohort of 12, and that's per county guidelines that we were limited to. Each cohort had to have no more than 12 kids, and they had two counselors, if you will. And then starting in August, we started running our in-person after-school program. And unfortunately, we didn't account for the poor air quality. So we've canceled quite a few days, but those will all be tacked on to our hope is that we can tack them on to the end of the session, and it will be one 6-week session. And there's 2 cohorts. So there's about 24 kids in that program. And then lastly, not leastly, but is our senior programs. Really, the staff is just these days just really focusing on essential services. And for the senior center, again, using that building as a staging area to provide meals, essential items, and groceries for seniors. And they have some incredibly impressive numbers. Since March, they've delivered more than 7,000 meals to seniors, and approximately 350 bags of groceries have been delivered. So we're busy. It might look a little bit different than it did pre-COVID, but this is just a general overview of what we've been up to and the parks and facilities. So with that, does anyone have any questions?
Great. Thanks for that. Any commissioner questions on the presentation? I have a question about a couple of things. One is, do you know what the status of the Ocean View tennis court lights is? When we were doing the pickleball work, there were some concerns about those lights not working properly. Do you know anything about that, or have you heard anything?
The lights I wasn't certain of. I thought those had been fixed. I don't know if Isabel or Mark has any more information. When is the last time you tried them, Chair Nibble?
I have not ever used the lights at the Ocean View Park. There was a problem with the Memorial Park lights that seems to have been resolved.
Okay.
But
Yep.
6 months, a year ago, when we were talking about pickleball at Ocean View Park, some people commented that the Ocean View Park tennis court lights were not working properly.
Okay. I believe those have been fixed, but I'll triple check and I can. Oh, Mark, go for it.
So I think there were a couple things. If I recall that conversation, the issue was that they weren't very bright. And I think that's more the layout and design of the lights rather than a functional issue, if that makes sense. They're not, I'm not sure they were ever designed to be sort of stadium lights, like to promote play at night. That's at least the feed I got from talking to folks in our department.
Okay. So they may be working as well as they are able to.
Yeah, and I know we did have an issue at the Memorial Park, and there was and as I recall, that was more of a timer reset type issue than, and I think that's been fixed. There might have been something at Ocean View Park too, but I that would be in addition to the basic design issue.
Okay.
Yeah, this is Commissioner Martin. I would add that the Mark's recollection is basically my recollection, and that my understanding is that the plans for the conversion of the tennis courts to pickleball was going to go through another iteration or so, and that the lights would be one thing that would be considered to be just completely replaced and redone potentially, but that final decisions hadn't been made on that, and that would be a ways out.
Thank you.
Any other commissioner questions or comments on the presentation?
If I can jump in real quick, Commissioner Abbott, how are the rules being enforced? I know I've seen people playing basketball on Memorial.
Yeah, this is a conversation we have. The city operates under county and state and federal rules, and those are the signs and the rules that are posted. And we do have, what would we call them? Park ambassadors that are staff that do go around to each park. However, they're mostly looking for signages down, caution tape is down, and we've asked, they're not engaging with the public as much as reporting back like, hey, people are playing basketball. And so as far as rule enforcement, we're leaving it up to the general public to kind of enforce themselves. But you're right. I mean, I assume that not 100% of our general public is following all the rules.
Understood. Thank you.
So based on the guidelines that you just outlined, when will playgrounds be allowed to reopen and under what conditions?
And that's where we're kind of following county all of the guidelines. At this point, everything is still closed. They're considered high touch. I haven't heard any ETA, if you will. So we continue to monitor those. Each time a new order comes out, we adjust our signages, our signage, and adjust our rules accordingly so that they fit county health guidelines.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from commissioners? No. Okay. Thank you for that presentation. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's see. Moving on to agenda item 6.1, tree removals. John.
Hello. I'm going to share my screen here if I can. Okay, so I have two trees that I wanted to bring in this month. One of them's a bit urgent because of construction going on at the house, and the other one is basically a dead tree that needs to come out. The first one is 922 Nielsen, and it's a liquid amber tree. It's a tree that's been topped several times, continuously topped by PG&E for a line clearance. It's been doing a lot of infrastructure damage. On this picture, you can see the sidewalk is basically a bit of a roller coaster here. It's been lifted in several places. The trees pushed the curb out. And it's created a little ponding area here. This picture is from this month, or recent anyway, and there's water there. Right behind the fender, the bumper of the truck, it looks like kind of pushed up asphalt. That's actually a root of the tree growing parallel to the curb. Let's see, another picture, another view of the damage up and down the sidewalk that's been caused by this tree. Some more sidewalk damage. Again, that shot with at the bottom, you can see the root that's popping up along the curb, and where the curb is broken and pushed out in a couple places. There's no picture here. This is a picture of the other side of the tree where roots are hanging over. Oh, here it is. Roots are starting to grow over the concrete a little bit. Here's another view. Some pretty serious sidewalk damage. Let's see, another view. So the crown of the tree, what happens when these trees get topped? Liquid amber is a tree that likes to grow in a more pyramidal shape, and the topping of it forces growth out laterally to the sides, and liquid amber can put on a lot of weight. They're not built to have these widely expanding lateral limbs, and that's why we have so many liquid amber limb failures. That's one of the reasons. And this tree, there's a couple places where there's some included bark. There's up sort of near the top in the middle of the tree, you can see, and down at the bottom, that's not the best branching union. And again, the middle, there's kind of four different branches coming out there that are places where there is liable to be limb failure. Here's another shot from a little bit different angle. There was an old limb, not a huge limb, but a limb came down. I don't remember when, a little whiles back. Again, here's the view of the tree in the sidewalk. The tree's basically overgrown the planting strip here. It's wider than the planting strip. Liquid ambers have shallow roots. This one, the the root crown is what we're looking at, and that's what's pushing up the sidewalk, pushing out the curb, and it's basically overgrown its space. You see a little red dot on the tree. That means that PG&E is going to top the tree again this year. They mark trees. They put dots on trees that they need to prune. So the property owner applied to have this removed due to the sidewalk damage. And as you can see in these pictures, they're doing some major reconstruction on the property. They found roots up against the foundation of the house in the front yard. I don't know if I have a picture that would illustrate that, but look back. Well, there's the house in the back, the yellow house, and roots are extending back there. What they're going to need to do is remove the entire sidewalk and replace it, and they're going to install some drainage pipes also, which would mean serious root pruning on this tree, which would basically leave the tree unstable. It would leave it in a weakened state. What we're seeing is when we're root pruning trees, it's a wound that weakens a tree, and it leaves them susceptible to limb failure. We've had about 10 liquid amber limb failures this year since July. We've had one in May that actually damaged a vehicle after it was up for removal in 2000, when was it? A few years back, 2018, and we denied the removal on the tree that dropped the limb and damaged the car, and in turn the city paid out a claim on that one. This tree was also up for removal in 2017, I believe, and at the time we denied it. The sidewalk wasn't as bad. The tree is healthy, it's lush and healthy, but with a liquid amber tree, that's part of the problem. The trees are too healthy, too lush. They put on a lot of growth, which often leads to limb failure. So I think this tree, one other thing about the sidewalk is that the property owner did do some sidewalk repair a long time ago, 2006 maybe, but they did the sidewalk repair. It qualifies for removal under several of the subsections on the city tree removal policy. So that's where I feel this tree should be approved for removal. That's it. Questions?
Thanks, John. Any commissioner questions?
I have a question.
Yes, Commissioner Nigas.
So in this case, I can see that there's extensive damage to the sidewalk, but there's also extensive damage to the curb. And I'm wondering, as part of this project for the work on the house, I understand the homeowner is going to replace the sidewalk, but I'm wondering, is it the city's responsibility then to replace the curb as well? Or is the homeowner going to take care of that as part of the removal of the tree in this project?
That's a good question, and I'm not city.
I can answer that. In places where we've had this situation, we've tried to correct the damage as part of a, we would be responsible for it. We would either do an annual sort of base repair contract where we go out and dig out the roots and repair it, or as part of an overall paving project. So in this situation, the homeowner is going to fix the sidewalk and the driveway apron, and then somewhere down the line, we're going to come down and fix the curb and gutter and pavement. And it'll either be as part of an annual potholing or base repair contract or a larger upgrade.
And if in this case, the removal of the tree causes, because I think it's going to be hard to keep that curb in place when the tree comes out, and there may be damage to the street as well. I'm just wondering what the impacts will be if that is the case.
This is a pretty severe case, and depending on what it looks like after the tree, we might go in and do a spot repair on the curb and gutter. Most cases aren't this drastic.
Okay, thank you.
And there is some street damage, and there's pictures in your packet that came from the architect who was able to take pictures without a vehicle being parked there. So,
Do you have? Oh, sorry.
they're separate issues, is all I was going to say. They're separate. They get dealt with separately.
Do you have photos from what it looked like 2 years ago or 3 years ago in 2017 when they applied? Because I happen to walk by here all the time. It's outside of my sphere of influence. But since the construction has begun, like the status of the sidewalk has deteriorated markedly. And so I'm just wondering if you can provide evidence of what is just the tree and kind of what has gone on since this house has been under construction, which has been multiple years. So it's exciting to me that this is finally going to be improved because it's impossible to say take a stroller over. I've had to like walk into the street because of like this house, but I also know that like the construction has caused a ton of damage, just heavy machinery kind of going over the sidewalk there.
I have some pictures. I don't have them available to me right now, though. The damage is definitely worse now. In those pictures, you can still see damage. You still see root damage. And if you look in some of these pictures, you can see that something like this is where the root is lifting different sections of the sidewalk. And in the long views where it's kind of roller coaster, those peaks are all roots that are pushing up the sidewalk. So I would imagine that the driveway possibly is more damaged with the construction activity here. I don't know about the rest of the sidewalk. It may be more damaged, but part of that is because the roots are lifting the concrete and whatever equipment, machinery they have is pushing it down and breaking it up more.
So how quickly after the tree is removed would like what parts of the sidewalk would be repaired and when? Just in terms of timeline, do you know?
That's a good question. I don't know for sure. I'm not sure if I think we have the architect and the owner on. Maybe they can address that. The project at this point seems to be moving along pretty quickly, so hopefully it would happen soon.
Thank you.
Any other
I would say that it may be the moment's past, but I have the pictures up here if you want me to share my screen real quick. I have the 2017 packet if anybody wants to see that. It may be too late though. That's fine.
I mean, I'm interested to see it. But...
Is it possible for me to share my screen?
I don't know.
Maybe I have to give up my screen. Okay,
John would unshare his screen.
There you go.
And so that's the packet from 2017.
So the damage is far more severe now. I mean, it seems like there was still a lot of the curb issue, but the uplifting and then all of the other cracking is due to construction. Like I think it's really the uplifting and the pushing out of the curb that are what the tree has caused, and the rest of what the picture shows, I think, is unrelated to tree damage.
Well, I think a lot of the lifting on the sidewalk is root damage. You can see it here. You can see it in the middle right picture on basically on either side of the walkway. And you can see that the walkway itself is lifted. There's space underneath it right there.
Yeah, and it's gotten more severe, it looks like, since this time. Yeah, sure. Okay. This is really helpful. Thank you, Commissioner Abbott, for pulling these up.
My pleasure.
Any other commissioner questions at this point? And I think that the architect and maybe the property owner is in attendance. Do either of you wish to make any comments on this? Yes, so. Can we?
Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah. So can. All right, Jason. I think you're on.
Okay. I can comment on a couple of things. I can address the schedule of when the sidewalk might be replaced. Would be the last thing we would do on the project, and the owner hopes to finish by the end of this calendar year. I don't know if that actually happens, but we say that that's the goal. So probably in January, February, I'm going to say the sidewalk gets done, something like that. The problem with the driveway is not related to construction. The crushed driveway and sidewalk that's crushed there is the result, I think, of a problem that persists on this property and the one that is immediately to the south. And that is that the street has been paved to a higher elevation. And the gutter, the natural storm drain gutter of the street, has been draining across that driveway curb cut and onto the neighbor's property that's south of this property. And you can see the same kind of damage to the sidewalk. I believe it's drainage related. I believe it's related to the fact that the Marin is a creek and the underlying soils are poor. And you can see I submitted some photographs. I think I submitted some photographs of the condition of the radius sidewalk at the crosswalk, or where the crosswalk would be. There is, I would say, possibly 1 inch of curb rise to the street, and all of the concrete is as fractured as the concrete that's fractured in the driveway. None of the damage that you encounter on a daily basis is in any way really related to construction. It all predates construction. But it's a shocking amount of damage. It's pulverized. But I believe it has to do with the drainage conditions there. And they're made worse by having no curb and not keeping the water in the storm drain system. So they're literally overwhelming the driveway, and they're overwhelming the neighbor's property to the south. And so along those lines, we've talked with people at the city, Jeff Bond and Nick Brown, about also replacing the curb in front of, or getting the curb replaced in front of the property that's immediately to the south to address that issue. So I imagine those two things, the curb face in front of 922 and the curb face in front of the Marin address, would get replaced at the same time. I think that's what I see. And I don't know if you noticed in the 2017 picture, there was actually a very good picture of the walkway that leads to the house, which you can see a tree root has not just crossed the sidewalk, but it's crossed the sidewalk and taken a southward left turn and lifted up that walkway. That walkway was removed because it got so bad. So that walkway doesn't exist anymore, the one leading to the house. And we would want to replace that at some point as part of the landscaping of the front yard. But we wouldn't do it without the tree removal. I don't know if Yvonne wants to say anything.
Yvonne, if you want to make any comments, now is your chance.
I have owned the house since 1984, and it was a very tiny tree at that time. And I've seen it really grow, and the damage on the street is also shocking. That when you park, or if anyone parks in front of the house, they go over major roots. So the roots are really big and very pervasive. And the problem I'm having with drainage, which Jason Caldas has brought up, is that we have a lot of water runoff on our street, and we will have to pump our water to the street for proper treatment of runoff water, and it just flows all over the place. And so the neighbor to my south, which is has a Marin Avenue address, is really desperate to fix it. And so I told him I would try and give him a hand. And so I would like you to consider his plight, which is actually worse than mine, because his whole front lawn and yard are covered in water during the winter. And that's it.
Thank you, Yvonne. Thank you, Jason. So I'll bring it back to the commission. Any comments, motions?
Well, I'm prepared to make a motion that we approve the permit to remove this tree.
Okay. Do we have a second on that? Okay.
A second.
Commissioner Martinez and Cedinas. Okay. Any discussion before we vote?
I think this is some of the worst like area of sidewalk in Albany. And so I think it is a good idea to take care of this, and it's good to hear that there's a plan for how to address these issues moving forward.
Yes, and I hope the city can support the property owners to resolve some of these drainage issues to the extent that that's possible. Okay, can we have a roll call vote, please?
And I just want to confirm that the second is Commissioner Sardinas.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, roll call. Commissioner Abbott.
Aye.
Commissioner Frank. Oh, we didn't hear you.
Yeah, your audio is not
I
working.
think you need to turn up your volume.
I think she's signaling yes.
Okay. Yeah, and if you get your volume back on, let us know, so we can get we can hear you say yes. Commissioner Martin.
Yes.
Commissioner Nagus.
Yes.
Commissioner Sardinas.
Yes.
And Chair Noble.
Yes. Okay, that passes. So on to 1509 Posen.
All right, let me get my screen back up and look at this. Okay, 1509 Posen, it's a purple leaf plum tree. It's basically dying. It's got some missing bark. You can see half the bark around the trunk is dying. You can see the dead trunk of the tree, the dead sections of the trunk beneath. There's areas of sap or exude that possibly from beetles or some insects that are attacking the tree because it's in such bad shape. One of the limbs is split, bark is peeling, included bark, it's cracking, it's ready to split open right there. It's been growing at a lean, I don't know how long, but apparently it was bumped by a car a long time ago. The owners just want to take it out and start over again. That's basically it on this tree. Questions? Are you there? Am I not there?
We hear you. I just think there aren't any questions.
Oh, okay.
How old is this tree?
I don't know for sure. Looking at it, maybe 15 years old.
It seems quite stunted for its age.
I think it hasn't ever really grown out. It hasn't been lush. It probably got bumped when I was young and got the roots ripped up a little bit, and it's just been hanging on for a long time. I've noticed the tree for a long time like that.
And if I may, I noticed that there's a number of fig trees near. I mean, in fact, I'm sure this will be replaced with a fig tree, but and they're all quite stunted too. So I wonder if they're just a small variety, or if there's just a water supply issue or something that brightened this.
The fig trees are not something the city planted. That's something the resident put out on the curb, and we wouldn't replant with a fig tree. So
good luck. Yeah.
Again, I don't know when those fig trees were planted or how they're cared for, but that's not really what we would replant there. I don't know if I had a suggested replacement tree, but we'll figure out something. Probably not purpley plum.
I was making a joke. I'm sorry. I love figs, and so I noticed the fig trees. There's a lot of fig trees right there, so I was making a joke.
Yeah. Questions? Any other comments?
Any questions, comments, motions from commissioners?
Did we want to open it up for public comment?
You know, I think I did that, but while I was in mute, so I guess that doesn't count.
Oh.
So any members of the public who wish to, I was wondering why everybody was ignoring me. Any members of the public who wish to speak on this item? Seeing none, any additional commissioner questions, comments, or motions?
I move to remove the tree. Martin?
Okay.
I second.
Roll call, please.
Okay. Commissioner Abbott?
Aye.
Commissioner Frank? Okay, Commissioner Frank says yes. Commissioner Martin?
Yes.
Commissioner Nagus?
Yes.
Commissioner Sardinas?
Yes.
And Chair Noble?
Yes. Okay, that passes. Thank you, John, for your
Okay,
work.
thank you.
Appreciate it. The next item on the agenda is 6.3. Agenda item 6.3, bike park on Caltrans property. Mark.
No, it's actually 6.2.
6.2. I have such a hard time with these agendas for some reason. Has to do, I think, with the spacing. So, agenda item 6.2, Albany Hill access improvements. Mark.
All right, is everyone's, well, first of all, can everyone hear me? Yep.
Yes.
Okay, and then can you see the screen? Yep, okay, good. So this is just gonna be a sort of wrap up update on the project. So we've got a number of pictures here of the final construction. Just as a reminder, the scope of the project was improvements in the Albany Hill area. We looked at improvements really to the whole trail network from the park entrances. We built a ADA compliant trail from the Taft turnaround up to the summit. We did a number of improvements throughout the trail system, including putting in a bunch of trail stairs. We put in over 100 and we have more planned. We'll get into that a little bit. And then the one thing that we added that, well, just taking a step back, all the improvements that we constructed, except for this last one, are identified in the Albany Hill Master Plan. That's the 2012 document that really is the basis for this entire project. This last item is a dry fire line, is something we added to the scope based on discussions with the fire department and really an ongoing concern about fire safety up on the hill. And so we have some pictures of that, and that's a real bonus to the project, or to Albany Hill. The project started construction almost a year ago, last October, and it continued through May of this year, and we were substantially complete. And then the project was formally accepted by council in July. So let me run through some pictures here. Here's some of the entrance, the entrance pictures. This is the Taft entrance. You can see we have an ADA parking space. And some other improvements. You see the trash can on the left-hand side. That is a temporary trash can. We do have some work. So we finished this project, but there's other things that we're doing, and I'm going to kind of try to weave that in. And it is a full trash can, but when I took this picture this morning, the waste management truck was parked down the hill. So presumably they empty the trash. So I hope it doesn't look like this all the time. But our plan is to put one of the 2-stream big belly trash cans here, and that'll help us. It's larger capacity and hopefully will avoid this sort of a look. We're targeting a different location for the permanent trash cans. This will be on the right side of the picture. You see the bumper of my car would be in that area right off the roadway. We think we can do a small pad and then put the trash cans there. We think that provides a little bit more space for the trash cans, and then they'll be accessible to everybody still. This is really an awkward spot. You're sort of away. To get to it, you're really in the street, and we want to avoid that and give people a place to get off the street to use the trash cans. This is a look at the entrance to the park. Again, at the Taft turnaround, you see the new gate. The red manifold is part of the dry fire system, and I have another picture of that. So that's a new feature. And then you see the path the ADA path going up to the summit. And further to the right, there's some more trail improvements going down the slope, and we'll see that as well. This is at the end of Jackson. We have benches, log benches, bike racks, one bike rack, stairs leading. This is leading up to Taft. There's stairs leading back down to Madison. I don't have a picture of that, but they're very similar. We do have additional stairs planned, and I'll show that on a different photo. Here's the Madison entrance, and this is a little more extensive. We have a little footbridge going across a bit of a drainage, and then some defined trail improvements with the rocks. So there's a trail network that runs between the last picture at Jackson down to Madison, and we do have additional trail improvements planned for that area. There's a couple reasons we chose this route. We had the contractor we had was very good at sort of the heavier construction, but it was near the end of the project. We were getting in. It's more difficult to have him pay attention to these sort of smaller things that are more less designed and more kind of out in the field and placed sort of organically. So we pulled that work from their scope, and we've engaged Urban Tilt to help put the trail steps in. And I think there was a comment about some additional erosion and things of that. We completely agree that this is the stretch that needs some additional attention, and we're going to add that to Urban Tilt's scope. And we think that's a better approach, because you're working kind of one-on-one with folks, and it's less of a contractor looking to get to the next job. So I think that's going to be a more successful approach. Trail improvements, again, here's the ADA path heading up to the summit. We have the turnaround at the summit, and we have log seating. I think the next picture here, we have some, again, intermediate log seating. We have I think we have two log seating areas between the Taft turnaround and the summit. And we have an additional picture here during construction. One of the things that we have planned for this fall is additional planting in this area. Again, I think one of the comments we got was we need more planting in specific areas. And we have engaged, and this is one for protection of the monarchs. We've engaged Stuart Weiss in reviewing sort of the planting that we've done. We, as part of the project, we've planted over 1,000 plants, and the plants, 1,000 native plants, and those plants were grown from seeds that were harvested from the hill. We contracted with 2 separate nurseries to grow the plants. So we're truly trying to take a holistic approach to this. And once we get the recommendations from Stuart, we'll go implement those. But we definitely have work planned in the fall. And this sort of ties into the budget conversation that we had before, where now we have dedicated long-term funding. So we have project funding that help build this, and we have some additional project funding that we're going to spend on the stairs. But then we also have long-term funding to help support and maintain the plantings over the long term. Also, and we're hoping to bring this back to the commission, or bring this to the commission in either October or November. We are talking with Urban Tilth to enter into a long-term contract to help us maintain all of our open spaces. So this would be, right now we do it with contracts, but it's sort of a one-off where we get together a scope and we do the work and then they go away. This would be a longer-term relationship, very similar to what we do in some of our other landscapes, where we would be getting services throughout the year, including some sort of higher touch things during fire season. And my hope is that'll give us a sort of a much better long-term approach to how we manage not only this area, but all the open spaces and creeks. This is the improvement, trail improvements going down between Taft and Jackson. What we tried to do here was realign the trail a bit. This was very straight and they had erosion. And so the idea is realign it so we don't create just a pathway for water to go down and continue erosion. And then we have the trail steps. Again, I think we had a comment about mountain bikes, not so much on this reach, but the reach between Jackson and Madison. We completely agree that mountain bikes are a problem here. We're investigating signage is a good point, and other measures to discourage mountain bikes there. And we'll have Urban Tilth destroy that mountain bike sort of facility, that mountain bike social park that they have there as well. So these things are on our radar, and we absolutely intend to continue working with them or working on them. And my sense is this is going to be something that's a work in progress. It's not, this project isn't the end point on all of this. And then again, more trail improvements. This is the Madison Trail. Now we're looking at the fire line. So this is an interesting feature. It's, there's a hydrant system that ends probably about 100 or so feet from the Taft turnaround. And from a firefighting perspective, what we wanted to do, we wanted to get water to the top of the hill. We talked about trying to extend another hydrant up there and actually connect it into the East Bay Mud system. We ran into a couple issues. One, it's expensive. Tying it into the East Bay Mud system adds a lot of complicating factors. So we chose a route to almost model what happens on a standpipe system for a building, where we provide a manifold at the bottom of the hill. We have a hydrant at the top of the hill. The fire truck, as you'll see in the second picture here, the fire truck comes up, pulls up, and then can connect to the manifold and pump water to the top of the hill at whatever rate they need. And so you see here at our commissioning where we're able to pump, and I think they were looking at trying to get, I think 1,500 gallons a minute up at the top of the hill. So that's a real benefit from a fire management perspective. The last piece of work here that we have to do is we want to install an additional hydrant make it the connection easier. So we want to, instead of having 100-foot reach that they have to pump from or connect to the other hydrant, we want to shorten that and do it strategically so that if there is a fire, the fire department can come and park in a way that allows other emergency vehicles to have access. Right now, the hydrant is on the other side of the street, so you'd have to string hoses and equipment would have to drive over the hoses, which poses problems. So we would put it on the hillside in a way that the fire department can come in with one of their trucks, connect in, pump, and the operator can see both the manifold and the hydrant, and then we can get water to the top of the hill. And that's in the works with East Bay Mud, again, separate from this project since the contractor is really not a value added in that piece. Again, the additional work we have planned, the vegetation, we have a lot of work planned in the fall to install additional plantings, and then we'll just maintain them throughout the year. Mostly this will be with urban tilth, I believe, if we can get our contracting work done. We'd also supplement with volunteers. It's kind of difficult now with COVID, but long-term, that would be the thing, is it's a combination of staff work, contractors, and volunteer work. We have big belly trash cans planned at the Taft area. We have the additional hydrant that's in play. We have trail steps, and the trail steps are going to be installed probably within the next month or so, or we're finalizing the contract with them right now to get them in. So we would want to get that started here pretty quickly. The other thing is we have the Cerrito Creek Bridge. This is something that was in the master plan. And about a year or so ago, we applied for a grant from the Coastal Commission, and we received that. And we're looking at the funding agreement for that, and that'll go to council here in the fall, I think before the end of the calendar year. And then we can start looking at how to execute that project. It's a little complicated because most of the creek is in El Cerrito. We have just a little bit of the southern bank, so we'll have to do it in collaboration with El Cerrito, and so I'm not sure how our timeframes would work, particularly with the new reality around COVID and budgets, and so we're still pushing that, but I'm not sure how the schedule will work on that piece. And then the last thing is, I don't know if you remember on the early concepts, we had some steps on another entrance steps on the sort of the south side of the park. At Taft, and I think it's Hillside. When we started laying those out, we realized that's within the private parcel there, so we really didn't have the land rights for that. We have a pretty well developed design for those steps. So our thought is in any sort of development discussion, those steps would be incorporated into that somehow, whether it's something we do, something we hand them over the drawings and they do, but that's the long-term plan, but it's just not feasible at this point. So that's it. I'm happy to answer any questions.
I had some questions, Commissioner Martin.
Sure.
First of all, the work I've seen so far looks great. I live near the base of the hill and walk up there fairly frequently, and it's been really good to see all those different parts that you highlighted. And I'm glad you're giving us an update on the parts that we had seen plans for but haven't been completed. So looking forward to the steps happening soon on the narrow trails. The Taft Street so two questions. One is for the Taft Street steps. The information you provided says the parcel is on the south side of our Albany Hill, but is this the one that's really on like the southwest side that's been discussion of development?
Yeah, it actually extends up over the crest and down to the other side. So
Really? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because I thought it stayed mostly along the fire road on the ridge, but maybe on down there.
Yeah, I think that was I yeah, I think there is a piece where it narrows down, but yeah, in this area where we planned the steps, it does extend all the way down.
Okay. So, all right. And then my other question was with the Cerrito Creek Bridge. There's been discussion in town of a different bridge crossing the same creek on Adams Street. Do you know if the same agency is, I mean, how did the funding work for this? Is that something that's just for parks, or is that for creek crossings in general?
It was tied to, so it was through the Coastal Commission, and I think it was, I don't exactly know all the details of the piece, but it was tied to connecting trail networks, pedestrian trail networks.
All right, thanks.
Okay. Before we take public comment, any other questions from commissioners? For some reason, I can't see anybody on my screen right now. Go ahead and speak up if you want to say anything.
Why don't I stop sharing my screen, and that'll help it.
Okay, that's great.
I just had a really inconsequential question. When Urban Tilt comes and does their work, or when you do the replanting, will the poison oak be managed that's along the ADA walkway? And is there a plan, say, that Margot has for managing that over the long term? Because it does overhang the walkway in some areas.
I'll ask her about that. Yeah, that seems like something, we don't want that on the ADA trail.
Yeah, but overall, I think that it looks really good. There were some public comments around, will there be more like bicycle access, or like bike racks, I believe was one of the public comments we received. So just to pose that question so it doesn't get lost.
So on the bike racks, we haven't had any. So we built the ones that were planned. My sense on like all of these things, if there's a need, we'll figure out a way to put more. And I look at that for trash cans as well. We want, if there's a need for it, we'll put the bike racks out there.
Gotcha. Yeah, I haven't seen a lot of bikes parked there, but I just wanted to make sure that got asked. My other question, I guess, pertains to, we have like a interpretive signage subcommittee where we had like sent out, a questionnaire to folks right when COVID started. And I think really only Margot and one person from Friends of Albany Hill responded. But, that was something where we had talked about it in the past as being something that could potentially be added. And it was unclear at that time whether or not there was funding. So I guess, I think that's something that is on our work plan, which we'll be talking about later, but getting an understanding from you as to whether or not that is something that would, if it were planned, could be funded through some mechanism would be helpful. Sorry, it was a little convoluted.
No. I think that, so I remember having a number of discussions during the development about interpretive signage and how we wanted something sort of across all the parks rather than just we do something here. So my sense would be that we would want to kind of define that and get to a point that maybe that's its own separate sort of project and figure out how to fund that itself. But I completely agree there needs to be some sort of interpretive signage or even wayfinding type signage that would be helpful here.
Yeah, I think we talked about like a board with like the map kind of like at one of the entries or a few of the entries, and then actual interpretive signs with that within. Okay, so it sounds like it's to be determined.
To be determined, but I completely agree that that's something that's needed here and as well as other places.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Any other questions? No. Okay. I see we have an attendee. So Carol Fitzgerald has her hand raised.
Go ahead, Carol.
Carol, you appear muted. Oh, there you go.
Hi. I'm unmuted.
You are unmuted.
Great. Okay. So, yeah, it's good to hear all of this. And thank you for acknowledging the 3 items that I brought up in my letter. And so it all looks good. This is a test of my patience, and I'm somebody that's way up there in years, but I'm supposed to remember that patience grows, doesn't it? But I was curious about the, and I've raised issues with Robert much of the summer. In the spring about the hard pack that was caused by the parking lot of bulldozers that went on at the top of the hill. And I guess Urban Tilth is the contractor. You say that you're going to, in the vegetation restoration, you mentioned that staff will be a combination of staff, contractors, and volunteers. And I assume that staff means the vegetation manager. And I think you insinuated that Urban Tilth would be the contractor. Is that so?
Yeah, so a couple things. We're in transition here, so it's nothing set in stone. Our past approach has been hiring contracts on a basis, on a kind of case-by-case basis. We've been using Urban Tilth successfully on our creek restoration, and
okay.
And they seem capable and willing to expand the scope and actually get into some more longer-term agreement. So to the extent that we can develop that scope and get them under contract, they would do the work. If we can't, we would go back to our other approach where we hire contractors on a case-by-case basis. And one of the other contractors we've used is Recon, which is a sort of environmental restoration type firm. So that's what we would do. And I know the discussions you've had with Robert about the rutting at the top of the hill. We'll try to address that. I think there's probably some difference in how it should be left, and we'll just have to work through that over time.
Right, and then thank you, and then you are having Dr. Weiss come up and do a survey, I understand, for the issue that I raised about the buffer trees under the 3 cluster.
Yep. Yeah, so we've had him involved with all of our work and help guiding not only this project, but all of our work on Albany Hill. And so he's someone we look to have a long-term engagement with to make sure that everything we do is protective of the monarchs.
Well, I know that you've worked with him a lot. I also know that most of the time that outside of the original planning, when he was brought in, when we were planning for the accessible trail and what might interfere with the vegetation or with the monarch habitat, I know he was involved. But other times it's been when I've raised an issue such as this buffer tree, then he's called in. So, I'm always alert to when he's needed, and I appreciate that he's the one.
Yeah, and just to be clear, we use them for a lot of things. One of the things we have on our in our plans for hopefully this year is to do a fuel load study on the hill to identify where we have fuel load and how we reduce it. And we've been working with him on that project that's completely separate from this. So we look at him as a valuable resource and someone that we are going to have a long-term relationship with on a whole host of issues. So,
well, no, and that's wonderful, and I totally support it. As long as somebody's looking out for the monarchs, are already beginning to come. Up and down Solano and in my neighborhood on Madison. We're not sure if it's the summer residents or if it's the beginning of the migration, sort of the scouts. We're not sure. Okay, I don't know if there's time, but I was curious why the original vegetation plan was aborted.
Well, so what I guess what you're saying is the original plan. So the original plan actually had hydroseeding along that area. So we have grasses pick up, and so what we got into was it was later in the year than we wanted or anticipated. So we pulled that off. And one of the issues, we don't have irrigation up there, so it's hard to get the plants established. Also, we do the spring mow for spring and summer mow for fire. So to the extent that anything we would have put down there would have been torn up by the mow that we do for the fire protection. So on this approach, we're doing it I think in a more sort of sustainable way. We're planting individual plants, and we're gonna do it in a way that hopefully they'll we'll have a winter season to take root and then be much more sturdy for the long term.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. And I think maybe I'd like to ask the commission to maybe be a little more involved in that. You were mentioning that you come once a year with the plan of what you're doing. But I think that there's a lot of vegetation management going on up there that the decisions are being made just in-house and the public is not aware. And I'm so used to the community really being involved. And for instance, when we won the 2 urban forestry grants, our emphasis was not on planting, it was on finding the areas that were already native and pulling in that area so that the natives could spread. So there's a lot of planting that isn't needed if that approach is also included. So I think that it would be interesting to the community and to the commissioners also to know a little bit more about the practices. And is that possible?
I think that's something we can bring up when we bring it back to the commission for discussion.
Okay.
So, Carol, do you have any additional comments?
No, not now. Thank you.
Okay, thanks so much.
You're welcome.
So bring it back to the commission. Do you have any additional questions, comments, requests from staff on this item?
I have a question.
Yes, Commissioner Negus.
You said that there's no irrigation on the hill, and a lot of plants, even native plants, do benefit from a couple of years of additional water for their establishment. And I'm wondering if there's been any thought to doing some hand watering or something like that to make sure those plants get established well.
Yes, we do hand watering, and actually John has a water tank that fits on the back of the truck, and I think Margot has used that in the time. So yeah, we will nurse those plants as best we can until they can establish themselves.
Thanks.
Any other commissioners?
I can't help but mention that there's been some discussion about trash cans and where to put them and if we have enough. And one commissioner in particular brought that up several times and evoked smiles from everybody else at the time. So I just want to get that out there and let you know that one of us was thinking about trash cans all along.
Any other comments, questions? So the one comment I have is just to, and I'm sure you're doing this just to make sure that we're providing the public with up-to-date information on what's going on. And I don't know if the commission necessarily needs to oversee the ongoing maintenance or implementation of the plan, but as long as we're communicating well to the public in terms of what is happening, that's obviously important.
I think we strive to do that, and one of the things I will do is we are planning to come back with the sort of the vegetation plan here in the next couple meetings, and we'll expand it because I think we are doing some of those things, and maybe they aren't getting as the same highlights or publicity because it's not as grand as constructing a new project, but we'll try to highlight some of those things in our next presentation.
Great. Thank you. Okay, any other comments on this item before we move on? No. Okay, let's move on then to agenda item number 6.3. Bike park on Caltrans property.
Sure. And actually, I have one thing on the prior item. I get that there's probably been a lack of communication within Public Works or Public Works out to the community. And I don't know if you've noticed, but the last few e-news, we're upping our game in terms of project updates and so forth. So we can use that as an avenue to keep people up to date of what we're doing.
Great. Thanks, Mark.
Sure. The mountain bike park. So this is something I don't have a presentation. I was just going to talk about what I've learned. I think it was early in the year we had a overview of the work plan and CIP projects and so forth, and it came up that the bike park was something that's been lagging. With that, I went and reconnected with Caltrans to figure out what was going on, because in the past, we hadn't been involved in the discussions with Caltrans. We were just on the sort of receiving part and trying to pull things together. So I really wanted to understand what we needed to do. And what I got from Caltrans was really a message that they weren't in favor of this project at this location. They saw a lot of liability risk. And I also know their process now in terms of what they're looking for in approving a use. It goes from a conceptual proposal. Once you clear that hurdle, you go down the path to a preliminary design, a plan review, final approval, and it goes through, and then they issue an encroachment permit. And I think we were maybe a foot between the conceptual and the plan. What I took away from the conversation was that they had expressed that they didn't think this was a good site for it, and told us that it would take a lot, and they suggested that we look somewhere else. And I think we went down the path of, well, we'll show you that this is, we can do this. So based on the feedback that I got, which was, they're basically telling us to save your money and go look somewhere else. My recommendation is that we do look at a different location.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Any questions or comments or discussion from commissioners?
Yeah, I had one comment, which was maybe some comments. One is that in the agenda packet, we're missing an email that came from the community. So like 2 or 3 days ago. But that one, the other commissioners, I believe, got like I did, which gave a suggestion, which this was somebody who had been involved, a community member who had been involved with the initial plans, and I had met with, along with the designer of the mountain bike park at the current location. And he had gone around with Shelley at the time and maybe some others, and had identified another area that would also be good. It wouldn't have as much terrain built into it as the current one that Caltrans is saying is likely not going to work. And so that would be a suggestion that I would have as well, which would be to switch it to this other area that they had already had on their radar at the time, which is at basically the train tracks. It's just basically on the other side of the train tracks, where the train tracks cross Buchanan, where Buchanan crosses the train tracks, the northwest corner of that intersection. There's a bike path right there. And then in your report, Mark, you said that Caltrans didn't like the vertical barriers, the columns, and other wall features and things. And this has none of that. It's just open space with overpasses off in the distance. So that would be my suggestion, would be to go back to Caltrans with that location. We already have the plans from the previous location. Maybe they can just be overlaid on that new location as a first step to iterating it. I don't know. So those are my thoughts.
Yeah, so I didn't get that email, and I'll look at it. I'm sorry about that. I think I know the location that you're looking at, and I tend to agree that might be a pretty good location. So I can ping them about that location and see what we need to do.
Let's see. So
I have a sorry.
No, go ahead, Commissioner Sardinas.
Sorry. It's so interesting because I came into the process and, I guess it seemed like the conversation with Caltrans had already occurred because, to design something for a location is really interesting. But it sounds like from what you're describing, we kind of put the cart before the horse. And again, I wasn't really around. So I guess I'm just trying to understand a little bit more about like the genesis of it and how we kind of as a commission went down a road of like designing something for a location that would not work and probably would have never worked. I guess I'm just not fully understanding how that process occurred. Did I totally miss?
No, I have that exact same question.
Okay.
So I wasn't involved. So I wasn't involved in those early conversations. So in my mind, what I think would be a more productive approach would be identify the concept. Let's get the concept vetted, which is from what I understand, not a significant lift from a documentation perspective. And once we clear that hurdle, then it makes sense to me to make a recommendation that this actually become a project. And then we can get a budget for it. And then we can start pulling together the studies, because what I found, it got quickly into Caltrans wanting surveys. They wanting sort of engineered type information to kind of move to the next step. And that puts us in this sort of no man's land where it's not really a project, so we don't really have a budget, but they're asking for things. So, if it's a really small thing, that could be done as sort of an operating enhancement or operating project. But, once you start getting to a certain point, you need to have a project. One of the things I found interesting was looking at the package that the mountain bike consultant like some of their drawings included, Michael Baker, which is a big national engineering type firm. So I think you can work with them on concept things to a certain extent, but then you need to turn it into a real project and develop it like any sort of development project.
So I guess what are the steps to bridging the gap between where we are and getting there?
I guess if we want to investigate this other site, we can investigate that, have a conversation with Caltrans. If it seems like that doesn't have the same issues that they have, then we can bring it back. And then I think there's a recommendation that this becomes a project, and then it takes a more formalized approach. Because I think what we were feeling that, so this was a project in your minds, but in our minds, in our work plan, it didn't show up anywhere. So it wasn't getting the attention that it probably should. And so if it becomes a project, then we have sort of a way to prioritize it with some of the other things that we're doing.
Okay.
And then I would like to add also that as part of that process, you would make a recommendation to council, for it to become a project after the initial assessment is made up to the point as mentioned by Mark. Mhm.
Okay. So I want to confirm that we have no public wishing to comment on this item. If anybody wishes to comment, now is the time to do so. I'm not seeing any. Commissioner Abbott, I think you.
No, thanks, because I was getting away from the clarifying question to a comment. I was just going to say that in this particular case, there was some pretty motivated community involvement, and I think that's why maybe it moved a little differently than maybe one would have expected. I'm pretty sure they're the ones who contacted the designer and things like that. So that might be why it feels like we started down a path when we really shouldn't have been. It was kind of, there's a lot of balls in the air. Yeah.
So a thought that I have on this is that, there is a hand raised. Carol Fitzgerald. Carol, do you wish to make a comment on this item? If so, you can unmute yourself there.
Yeah, I guess I was always hopeful that the bike, that project would get going, because I think that may be one of the reasons that they're doing Albany Hill as a mountain bike area. And so I guess if the mountain bike scene happens sooner than later, I would be very happy for that reason. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Carol.
You're welcome.
So my thought on this is that for the commission to make a decision or a recommendation on how to proceed might be best done within the larger context of the overall work plan review. That there are a lot of things that people are interested in that we could work on, and I think we need to prioritize those things. So I might make a suggestion to the commission that when we discuss our next item on the agenda, which is the work plan review, we also sort of revisit what, if anything, the commission wants to do on this particular item. Any thoughts on that?
That sounds reasonable to me. I would ask Mark. I would ask Mark what he would need to hear from us to move forward with returning to Caltrans and trying a second site.
I guess I don't know if it's a resolution. I don't know what that process would be. I assume it would be a direction or a suggestion to look at this site and talk with Caltrans, and I think that would be the direction. I don't know if Isabel, if you had a.
Yeah, I think that it would be, and if there's, what I would like to say also, if there's any initial research that the commission can do on this site, to provide to Mark for his part in this, I would like that to be assessed as well. So there could be a direction for staff to engage in conversations with Caltrans for that specific site. But before that, if there's anything that the commission needs to do for the site, like maybe, providing a map to Mark, or, and maybe providing the original plans, some sort of initial work on it that Mark could take to Caltrans.
And I think also, as Commissioner Martin alluded to, the Albany High mountain bike team has been really vocal at our past meetings, and I believe they're some of the folks who've gone and helped assess the site. So I think they are a major kind of target group that would be utilizing the facility, so making sure that they're brought into the discussions of alternate sites as well.
Yes.
But again, I suggest that we make a decision about whether to pursue this as part of our next agenda item.
That
I
sounds
guess my
fine with
question.
me.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I guess my question is, what it seems like we can go two ways. We can say, okay, and I think this would be premature. We want to go to council with a suggestion or proposal that this area become a project or a mountain bike park, and then you guys would have the resources, you could spend the time and do all that. We're kind of asking now for kind of this informal check-in. Well, you're in contact with Caltrans. Can you just give another call and see if this is at all possible? And if that's the case, then we can go further down that path. I think that's kind of what we're thinking. And I wonder if it's actually the contact with Caltrans is more involved than I'm kind of think I have in my mind. Are they looking for more of a formal proposal for them to investigate and evaluate at this point? Or would it just, is it something you can just say, well, what about this other site? Would that work?
So I think I don't think it would be a formal proposal since they've already seen sort of the scope of what, so this isn't a new concept. It's applying this at another location and seeing if they see some of the same barriers. So I think it's if we were starting from scratch, they would need some more information, I think.
So it may not be, I don't want to speak for your time, but it might not be that heavy of a lift to check. Certainly not as much as the first one was.
Right.
Okay.
Well, that would be my suggestion would be to have Mark shoot that second location by Caltrans and have a something for our next meeting to report back with the possibility of an action item. This one was listed as receive information.
So, okay, so I failed in my effort for us to talk about this in the context of the larger work program. So I give up. And this is an issue of particular interest to me. I'm a mountain biker. My son's a mountain biker. And I don't want, I personally don't want this to just get dropped. And so I would be interested in coordinating with staff to help move this forward, or at least to sort of continue to explore our options, and to do that within the capacity of a commission member. But I also understand that there are a lot of other priorities that exist for the commission as well as for the community overall, and I understand that there's considerable demand for staff time for a variety of things beyond which we can't even imagine. So I do think that we need to be very careful about assigning tasks to staff, which may seem like very minimal time requirements, but Caltrans is this giant bureaucratic vortex that you could get sucked into and never find your way out. So I think that what I'm hearing from this conversation is that the commission does seem interested in sort of continuing to pursue this matter and asking staff to spend time on it. And if that's the case, I would be interested in volunteering myself and any other commissioners who would like to be involved in that.
I would be fine being involved with it. It sounded like Mark was had in mind something that was a pretty straightforward interaction, at least to get a green light, red light kind of green, yellow, red or something. I don't know. So
my sense is that that's not how Caltrans works.
Yeah.
And that to make any meaningful progress on this, it's going to require some time and effort. And I think we need to make a decision about whether or not we as a commission want to do that, and whether or not we want to ask staff to spend the time doing that.
Okay, we could establish a subcommittee. Is that?
Because I'm not sure that everybody is aware also of the new proposed location. So I think there's some work that needs to be done by a subcommittee, or about a little bit more in providing a little bit more information to the new site, and also the engagement by the community on the potential proposed new site. I think those are steps that could be taken even before staff involvement with Caltrans.
Mm-hmm. Was there a subcommittee that existed on this previously? Who is the champion of this? Who is leading it?
It was basically me, and then some members of the community, some of whom had connections to the mountain biking team.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm happy to continue, form a subcommittee with Ben would be my proposal then, and then but as far as like the next meeting, I don't know what information Mark would need to get back to us in October.
So my proposal is that, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
My proposal is that we form a subcommittee. You and I can have a conversation offline with Mark about how to proceed, and then we can sort of decide what we think is best and provide a report back to the full commission at the next meeting.
That sounds good. And we can also bring in some community members that have been involved as well.
Right. Well, let's talk first.
Okay. So I move that we establish a subcommittee of me and Mr. Commissioner Noble for exploring Mountain Bike Park.
All right. Do we have a second? Commissioner Abbott has seconded.
I'll second that. Yeah.
Do we need to do a roll call vote on this?
Yes. So Commissioner Abbott?
Aye.
Commissioner Frank? Yes, she says yes. Commissioner Martin?
Yes.
Commissioner Nagus?
Yes.
Commissioner Sardinas?
Yes.
And Chair Noble?
Yes. Okay. Great. Okay, moving on to agenda item 6.4. That is where we are in the agenda, right? Yes.
Yes.
Work plan update. So staff, do you have a presentation for this?
Well, basically, this work plan item is provided. We don't have a formal presentation or formal update to provide on, since the last one we did in December. But this is an opportunity for the commission to take a look at the work plan and see if there are items that you would like to prioritize and pursue in the next few months. And staff is available to answer questions that may arise as you go through this process. I can share my screen if you'd like with the work plan, showing the work plan. And I'm not sure, Chair Noble, if you had a specific process in mind, or if the commissioners already have an idea of what they would like to propose as priorities, you can go that way as well.
What I might suggest is that you do share your screen and just kind of remind us of the general outline of the work program. I was looking at it. It's been a while since I've looked at it, and I was actually a little bit confused about what was what. There's a section that includes council strategic plan goals with objectives in the table, and then there are other new work plan items, priorities, and I couldn't remember exactly why it was organized in that way.
Oh, okay. Well, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So what I did is the first pages are your work plan as adopted by the council. And those are all the recent initiatives were the initiatives of the previous work plan that the commission had achieved. And that was part of the presentation that you made to council when you went before council to get this work plan approved. And then the 2019 to 2021 policy review and initiatives are what has been approved by council based on your recommendation at the time. And then when I came on board, what Mark and I did, we provided you with a status update of all of the different initiatives that were included in your work plan, sort of a status update, and also a clarification, or some clarification on the role of the commission, so that moving forward, there was a little bit more clarity as to where each of the items were, as far as the progress made, any next steps, or if the project was completed. So here you have this is what we presented in December of 2019 to the commission. Would you like to go over each objective, like just to see, and then see if there's any interest in moving anything forward, or?
Well, I just have a question about this, and other commissioners might have a question as well. I can't really see their faces right now, so I don't know. But I'll ask my question first. So this table, the first two pages have objective 1, 2, and 3. Are those? Should I interpret that as council priorities?
Well, the council's strategic plan goal is the top, so for instance, maximize and improve parks and open space. That's the council strategic plan goal. And under each goal, the council had objectives. So, so objective 1 comes straight out of the council strategic plan. And one of the first objective was enhance parks. They had another objective to enhance open space, and then create cultural facilities and opportunities. And under,
I'm sorry, if I may, I think I understand what you're asking, Chernobyl, and that is this table maps the particular items onto the strategic plan goals of the council has for the commission. When it doesn't have anything to do with priorities. Priorities is that other list, the new work plan items list, where we have priority 1, priority. That's where the priorities are. Would you say that's correct?
I'm not quite sure where priorities are. Let's see.
It's
they're not
okay,
before
so
the table.
Yes. So basically, these are new work plan items priority. I think these were established by the commission when the work plan was written. So in addition to finding identifying projects under strategic goals from the council, the commission also had other projects that they wanted to work on, and I think those are the new work plan priority items.
Right, that's a commission generated prioritization.
Mm-hmm. And I guess they're already prioritized in some ways. You have priority 1 and priority 2, but there's quite a few in each of the priorities. And then, there's ongoing, and then there were ongoing priorities. Mm-hmm.
So I guess another way of asking my question is there anything in here that sort of identifies what the top priorities for the council were when approving our work plan, other than the sort of categorization of work plan items within these strategic plan goal objectives?
To my knowledge, no. But I wasn't there when the work plan was presented. But based on the council's strategic plan and the way they've formatted it, they did not provide any priorities for items, just objectives.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one way to have this discussion is also, looking at the status, the status column, and see if, if the project is completed, then there's, you're done with the project. It's probably mostly looking at the either projects that have not started or in progress and have stalled because of COVID or lack of funding.
Yeah, I guess a little. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and then of course, if any commissioners have any specific interests for an item over another.
Oh, look! I figured out how I can see everyone's face. That's great. So I guess a little more background on this agenda item. I think it's on the agenda in part because of a suggestion of mine to Isabel that Isabel received a request for putting on the agenda a particular work plan item to sort of resume or focus work on that. And my response to that was, well, maybe we should consider that within the larger context of everything that is on the commission's work plan, to make sure that we as a commission collectively kind of provide guidance to staff on the things that we think are most important for us to be working on, particularly given the demands on staff's time due to the pandemic and sort of budgetary limitations. So that's maybe a little more background about why this is before the commission in the way that it is tonight. So, and I think we have received a number of correspondence about this agenda item. Isabel, I wonder if maybe if you stop sharing your screen, this will be better for me. Okay, because then I can see the attendees better. I was saying that I think we have received some correspondence from the public sort of asking for a particular work plan initiative to kind of become more of a focus of our attention. So I think what I was envisioning is that we could consider, the commission could consider that comment and any other comments from commissioners, as well as to identify other things that we want to be focusing on, in the next 6 months to a year, for example. And I think we've already decided that potentially we're going to be spending some time on the mountain bike park idea, at least exploring it a little bit further. And I think that now's our opportunity as a commission to look at this work plan and make some decisions about what we think we want to be focusing on in the next 6 months to a year. So I guess my suggestion would be for commissioners to provide sort of comments on what they think should be a priority, given the limitations that we all face.
And just a slight point of
I think
order.
it's also go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to say that as a slight point of order, all of the advisory bodies will need to be reseated for the new year, 2021. So basically, as a commission right now, you have until December to work together as a group. And everybody will need to reapply if you want to be considered, as a commissioner on this board or any other board that the city has. And then if, at the beginning, I would say around the beginning of 2021, the commission will start working on a new work plan as well, which, some of the items can carry over, of course, but just wanted to give you an overview of the timeline, since you mentioned, 6 months to a year.
What I was going to say is I think it's also timely given how we're seeing people using parks in new ways and using parks, more of a lifeline in these pandemic times. And it's kind of given us a different perspective on the park system as well. So also good to reevaluate, for that reason as well. Something I had a general question for maybe Mark is, the way things used to go on the commission is we were told, okay, the parks has the Parks Commission, Parks and Rec has a certain pot of money, and we'd be given this amount of dollars from this measure, this amount of dollars from that measure, variety of other things. How do you want to spend that money? And let's brainstorm our priorities and get the public involved. And then we would say, okay, let's work on this one next. Let's work on that one next. But my understanding is that in the last year, things have changed, and that it's more of what are the priorities without regard to money. And then we look to see if there's money. That's my understanding of the message we're getting. And I'm also wondering if, with the new way the city's doing the budgeting, if there's something else we should be considering. Is there a more well-defined pot of money for parks that we should be thinking about? Or should we be dreaming up huge, small to huge projects and just proposing those? And then, I don't know, how should we be thinking about money behind some of these things?
So I've got a couple of thoughts here. One, I think one of the struggles that I've had in the past, and this is sort of our budgeting all around, if we start with a pot of money and then say, what do we want to do, and start parsing it out. One of the things I've seen is that you start with less than full budgets. So I don't think you're getting like the holistic budget of what it costs to do the project. An example of that would be the workout at Memorial Park. I think you were given hey, it's only going to cost this amount of money, and that's based on sort of a not full understanding of the scope. So I think it's worthwhile to start with priorities. Then we can do a little bit of work to start defining sort of the scope of what that would cost. And then we can come back and fit that in with budget. So I think it's good to start with the priority piece, because what I think what's ending up happening is that you have an expectation you can get all of these things done with a certain amount of money. Then the first one costs a little bit more than the other one, then this one costs a lot more. And then at the tail end, there's just not enough money to do the projects. And I think it would be more realistic, what are your top priorities? We can start putting budgets and scopes around that, and then we can make some decisions of how we want to deploy whatever resources we have, whether it be special revenue funds, general funds, or measure funds from some different places.
I have a question. I guess I think maybe this just goes to like what is the purpose of a commission generally for the city. So what I feel like you're describing is, yes, as commissioners, we kind of see a lot of things, and then our duty is to then, make recommendations to council. But what I take from Chair Noble's question initially is a little different. And so I guess what I'm trying to juggle is, as the Park Rec and Open Space Commission, what is kind of our obligation in terms of completing action items and prioritizing them and making sure that they happen. Because I want, at least when I think about the items on this list that I think we should prioritize, I want to make sure that they do reflect council's, priorities, that, regardless of whether or not there currently is or is not budget. I think that it should really tie into what the overall city vision is. Because when we went through this prioritization process before, it was a very big, just write all these different things on a, big pieces of paper, and then we kind of voted, and the things that got the most ticks kind of were the ones that got into priority 1, 2, and 3. And I think it was very like pie in the sky. And I love that there's so many great items and things to work on in Albany. But I do think like having more focused time by staff and the buy-in of council would help us actually tick through more of them in a more timely fashion and get some of them done.
Yeah, I completely agree. And the, your work plan has been approved by council, so you're free to work on any of the items that you choose. And unless council has highlighted any specific priority to you, I think it's probably realistic. A realistic approach would be to look at the items that you as commissioners can move forward, and the funding piece, of course, comes at the staff level. And then, as you move them along, we can certainly help you to, by letting you know that this is an unfunded project, but you can certainly move it to a certain point. Like I was just thinking of the signage on Albany Hill. You could certainly provide us with a concept, of what you would like to see and the type of signage you would like to see, and the information on the signs, and that would be your completed task at this point, because we don't have the funding piece, but we would keep what you've provided us, so that when funding is identified, we could go back to that work and use that to move the project forward. So I think it's more of a it's an ongoing conversation, and taking each item based on your interest, and then having a discussion about what's the best way to move forward, and if it is realistic to move it forward at this point.
Yeah, that's helpful. I guess maybe the point where I feel a little stuck is that maybe it's the virtual environment, but figuring out then how to structure this conversation given all of these different priorities, because I think we could, pick any number and probably talk till 11 p.m., right? And so I guess I'm just wondering if there's a way to more efficiently try and cherry pick, some things that maybe we're already working on or have come up a number of times, and maybe not have a full conversation of every topic on the list.
I think that in light of what Isabel was saying, 15 minutes ago about, we're really talking about a couple months of work here before the whole new work plan process begins. I think that maybe what we want to do, take this opportunity to review our work plan, which is very valuable, and pull out a couple agenda items for the next couple meetings and say, this is what we want to talk about, because that's all we really have time to do here. And I think that would be fairly concrete, and it allows us to include things like the mountain bike trail and things like that, and then just kind of move forward that way.
Yeah, it's like, what can we do before the legislative session is over? I think that's a good suggestion. I know I have a few things that I would like us to talk about, and other commissioners probably do as well. And so
that sounds good to me.
So maybe the way to approach this is for individual commissioners to maybe if there are any items on the work plan that you would like us to talk about in the near future, to identify it, and maybe there's some overlap in what's important to us. Does anybody wish to go first?
I'll jump in. And I think we also need to hear from staff. It's like, oh yeah, well you could talk about that thing, but nothing's going to happen with that for years. So they'll be free to say that. But one of the ones that I feel pretty strongly about is the playground feature in Terrace Park. Kind of getting that's down on second priority, but I was part of that discussion when we removed that tree, and it was very important to that community that it be replaced with something significant. So that's something I would kind of move up in priority. But just we needed somebody to go first, so there it is.
Can anybody hear me? This is Commissioner Frank.
You're very quiet.
A little bit.
I can go next just to name a few things. I would say the turf analysis at Pierce Street Park. I'm not sure what the status of that is, but particularly because playgrounds are closed, having more grass options for people to play on, I think is really important, and that's been on our agenda for quite a long time. I also think we have two kind of standing subcommittees. One is the community garden relocation, and our past chair, Patterson, was kind of leading that subcommittee, but now I think it's just Chernobyl and I on it. So I believe we shouldn't just let that fizzle and should continue to move that process forward. And then just because I've been looking at interpretive signage, maybe there's a way to get to a point where we could package that up. And then if I were to just throw in one more, I'm trying to just be brief, but I don't know if we could get to a point where we're doing a master street tree plan, but I would love to talk more about what that would look like and how that is something that we could work on in the future, even if we don't get to it by December, but just trying to understand what that would entail so that we could come up with a plan to work on the plan.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Commissioner Sardinas. Do any other commissioners have other work plan items that they'd like to see agendized in the near future?
I do. I'd like to just continue, based on all the community input that we got, I'd like to just see if we can make some progress on the pickleball courts, because that seemed like a really important issue to see if we can move forward.
Any other commissioners have items?
Can anyone hear me? Commissioner Frank, trying to get through.
Yeah, we can hear you okay.
I just had a question, Isabel, about the master, or the sort of update to the master recreation plan. Is that something that's still, I didn't see it here. Maybe I missed it.
So as part of the work plan, it was to identify funding. So the funding has been identified, and the next step is to the write-up of an RFP and to present to you and move that process along. So that's something that I would like to start working on, in the next couple months with Eva. Actually, Eva and I will be working on this together, and hopefully be able to present something to you, late, probably at one of your last meetings or early next year, but with the goal of bringing in a consultant definitely in the first part of 2021. Because the other thing is, for the next work plan, at least, and I'm not sure if it's gonna all line up, but it would be nice to have an idea of what the update of the Parks Master Plan is, so that you could align your goals and the projects to fulfill the master plan, instead of just going here and there and with no clear guiding document. So I'm hoping that it's really going to help the commission to focus once the Park Master Plan is updated. So that's one of the priority items for staff, actually, to move forward sooner.
Sounds good. I'll go next. Definitely the mountain biking skills park. So that's something that hopefully we can get something ready for the next for October, but if not October, November, at least some initial work on that. And then I know dog parks was on the previous month. If there's something, I don't know what the pacing is for any work on that, but if there's something that we can be updated on and have input on before the end of the year, that would be valuable to keep that moving along. And then also the items that some of the public emailed in, I think are important as well. Reviewing, these are ones that the council had asked under Objective 3, create cultural facilities and opportunities. The one on review existing public and private memorials, honors, and other installations on public land, plan and implement relocations and improvements as appropriate, and then create policies concerning private memorials and honors on public lands. So we couldn't finish that in 3 months, but it would be good to at least know the scope of that and have staff present on what resources staff can provide, or what's a good way to start with that. I think public input, I think the public, it's very much on people's minds to have input on how public spaces are being used for honors and memorials, how they've been used in the past for those kind of things, and how people envision them being used in the future.
Did we create a subcommittee for the memorials? Am I misremembering? I thought, yeah.
We did a couple of years ago, and I was on it with Voorhees, and he was only on the commission for just a few months.
Gotcha. Okay.
And then we were told, or I was told that that there would be, I believe my recollection, and maybe Isabel can help me out here, was that there would need to be some sort of initial, census at least of what's out there, and that would need to be it could either be staff time or a consultant to tabulate all this, or there's various options there.
Yeah, from
Actually,
the staff. Yeah, go ahead.
The way I see it, Brian, it's you. That's the name I'm seeing on this piece of paper.
Yeah, me going around with my clipboard and okay. So Isabel, what were you going to say?
Well, I was just going to say that from the staff's perspective, we would prefer to retain assistance because it's a really big project, and perhaps even fold it into the Parks Master Plan, ask the same consultant who's doing the update for the Parks Master Plan to also do an inventory of the memorials, public and private memorials. But if there's a piece, if there's a piece that the commission would like to move forward again sooner rather than later, that is fine too.
What were you saying was the timeline for a Parks Master Plan revision?
It's probably going to be in the first part of 2021.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so some of my thoughts on this is that these items that kind of we were working on and then just sort of stopped working on because of COVID, that being able to maybe re-engage on them so that the public doesn't feel like it's just been forgotten about is probably a good idea. So I think the pickleball one, and I think would be good for us to agendize in the near future.
If I may say something about pickleball, the plan is for staff to bring the recommendation to council, the recommendation that the Parks, Recreation, Open Space Commission made, and I can't remember the month you did it, but it was just before COVID, okay. Is to bring it to council, hopefully in October.
Okay.
So, and we would let the commission know and the public know when that goes to council.
October. So what month are we in now? We're in September, right?
So yeah, it's right around the corner.
The story of my life.
Yes.
Yeah. So, okay. So you'll be taking that to council in October, and then we can expect to hear about it after that.
Yeah, and actually, it would be, because it is your recommendation, then we would like some members of the commission to be present as well when that presentation is done.
Okay. And is there a need for us to kind of stay engaged in dog park related issues?
At this point, I think you've provided feedback on dog park amenities, and it's basically we have to work on the plan, finding funding. And Mark, please help me here. It's like I think it's again a funding piece. We don't have the funding identified to move the project, the amenities project, but there are some pieces I think that may move forward.
Yep. So there's a couple things. So we will look at developing a more of a coherent design for the concepts that we were given, and that's something we want to move forward with. And I think we can do that on the operating side. That's kind of a small enough level. We also have, we're working with the Boy Scout on the Boy Scout bench, and my hope is in the next week or so we're gonna get the concrete pad in, and that's something that we're going to do. It's at this point kind of figuring out the details. Eagle Scout projects are high touch, and I just want to get our pad done so they can have a clean slate and not have like our work intertwined. So my senses are going to start seeing the bench go up here in the next couple months. I know his birthday's coming up, so everyone's looking to get this thing done quickly. So there'll be some things going on short term, but then I think reconfiguring gates and things of that sort might be a little bit bigger of a hurdle.
And then I would just add that other than that, there's kind of this vague mandate to find another location for another dog park, but that I don't think that's really anything we necessarily have to bring, keep front of mind right now.
Okay. So, and I was very happy to hear that we're going to be hearing about moving forward on the updated Parks and Rec master plan and moving forward with that, and then RFP, and then beginning that process. Do you anticipate that RFP will include a requested scope of work for the consultant?
Yes. Yes.
And will that be coming to us before the RFP goes out?
Yes. So we will present you with a draft and get your comments, and then it would go to council.
Great. Great. And so I made a list of what everybody mentioned as being priority items, and it sounds like we'll be hearing about pickleball. We'll be hearing about the park master plan. Will be the mountain bike subcommittee will be reporting back next month. It sounds like with the dog park, maybe not anything in the near future that needs to come to the commission. And then on the memorials, it was sounding like staff's recommendation on that would be to fold it into the parks master plan. So that may not be coming back to us soon outside of that master plan update process.
That's correct. Again, unless because there's some pieces that, like Commissioner Martin mentioned, if you wanted to start the inventory, you can certainly proceed with that. But the intention, because it's such a, it's a big project beyond what the staff capacity right now. So our suggestion is to fold it into the master plan update and hopefully find a consultant who is interested in both. Mhm.
Okay. And then I wrote down a
And for
number
the public, I was just going to, on that point, for the public that wanted to provide input sooner than later, what are there any opportunities, Isabel, you can think of that they could do that?
You mean on the on this particular project?
More on the memorials,
on the
honors, other.
Yes, I think it's you know, if you want to put it as an agenda item, a future agenda item, as a commission to discuss and allow, you know, public comments at that time, sure. Or it can be done, you know, as part of the Parks Master Plan, because I'm sure, you know, with the update, there's going to be a lot of outreach and opportunities for the public to comment on all aspects of the master plan.
Okay, well, that sounds fine with me to wait for that for now. If the public has other ideas on that, then hopefully we can reevaluate.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then I wrote down a number of maybe smaller items: the playground feature at Terrace Park, the turf analysis at Pierce Street Park. Are those items that staff you think would be suitable and appropriate to agendize to provide an update or further discussion?
I have one question. I'm not sure I understand the Terrace Park issue. I'm not familiar with that. So if you can give
I see that it's as I look closer, it's kind of slotted in to think about this in the spring, and that's fine. It was just one that kind of struck close to me, so that's why I brought it up.
The turf analysis is a bit of a I'm not sure we're going to be able to get that done. We were looking at kicking it off. We've sort of lost that step, so we have to refresh the contract. We'd have to. So I think with all the other things we have going on right now, that's probably not something we would get going on in the short run.
Well, what about for Pierce Street Park turf thing? I haven't been there really recently. Is that whole area still roped off so people can't use it?
Yeah, I was walking that today, and yes, that is still. And I think we might just take those down. It was initially. We did the hydro seeding. This is the hydro seeding without irrigation. It doesn't do so well, so we might take that down. And I don't think there's any reason why people can't use it as a dirt field.
Yeah, so that would be my recommendation. Would be to, because one decision is like, no, we're not going to do turf and just make it grass, and we're not guaranteed to do an artificial turf surface there, and may as well get some use out of it now that parks and open spaces are such a high priority, as Commissioner Sardinius was also saying. So if we could take those ropes down and mow it or whatever is needed to get some basic usage out of it, that would be great.
Sure.
And so Commissioner Sardinius, you also mentioned the community garden. And I don't know, I'm kind of feeling like in a COVID environment that sort of continuing work on that with our stakeholders might be difficult. Do you feel like as a commission we should discuss how we want to proceed on that for now, or is that something that we can just decide at this moment to set aside until we revisit our work plan?
I guess I think the next step was that, it wasn't possible to do a lot of the tree pruning. So that it was either to figure out whether or not the garden needed to be reconfigured and if that was acceptable, or to try and identify alternate sites and to better understand which alternate sites have been identified in the past, and if so, why those were not moved forward with. So I think there's kind of those two trajectories, and I guess I wonder if that's something we could do with the Zoom meetings with them, just to get a temperature check on, where the community gardeners what they're feeling, how, what they're doing during COVID, if, how they're using the garden, and just not really let that slide, so that we can understand which path they prefer us to move forward on, or both, to just continue to have it be something we're thinking about. Because I think the issue was it had been thought about before and dropped. And so I guess that's my concern, is that that there's not follow through.
Yeah. Maybe just kind of reaching out to them again and letting them know that they have not been completely forgotten. And this is still important to the city to be able to move forward on this in some capacity at some time that works for everyone. I do question though how productive Zoom meetings with that group would be, but just sort of, I think reaching out would be a good thing to do.
Yeah, I think given the transition with former Commissioner Patterson, you can at least reach out and maintain continuity and kind of get a sense of, what they're thinking.
So maybe you and I offline can coordinate that, and we could provide an update, an update to the commission at some future meeting, not a full agenda item, but just an announcement about where things stand.
I like that. Okay.
Cool. And then interpretive signs. Do we have the bandwidth or the desire to continue working on that right now?
I want to say yes. I also am dealing with like a family emergency right now that will take up like through October for me, at least. So I like it. In all honesty, I probably won't be able to work on it.
I think this might be something to revisit when we do our work plan update. Would you be okay with that?
Yes.
Okay. All right, and then the last thing I've written down is the master street tree plan.
The reason I brought that up is just so often when we have like a street tree removal, we kind of come back to like what would the tree selection be? What would, what is in Albany? How many big trees do we have? Can we have a more cohesive like vision and assessment of what's there? Because I think there's also the sense that we remove a lot of trees. And so, what are the ages of the trees, and how can we go about it in a little bit more organized, cohesive fashion? But it would be a massive undertaking. So I don't know if that fits in with the overall Parks and Rec master plan or if it's separate.
It's actually on the community development duties, on plate. And I'm not sure what the status of it is, but I was just looking for it because I think as part of our December update, we had an update on that, and it was that it was going to be on, here we go. Community development will administer the planning process in 2020. But, again, with the pandemic and other unexpected things, it's probably going to be pushed back.
Okay, so it basically will happen on their schedule, and then that's when it would be brought to us?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. That works for me.
They'll do the heavy lifting and bring it over for you to comment on, get your feedback.
And just to clarify, it's not a street tree plan; it's a tree plan. So it covers more than just. If it was just a street plan, street trees, it would be our bailiwick. But it covers everything. So it's going to touch many different bodies. So it's much more extensive. So that's why it's very heavy and very much needed.
Yeah, great.
Okay. Well, I think that covered everything that I wrote down from commissioners. So I'm glad that we were able to talk about this and identify the things that were important to us in the near term. And thank you, Commissioner Abbott, for directing us to focus our attention just on the near term. That's certainly the more appropriate thing to do. And so staff, are you feeling like you have clarity on what our expectations are in terms of what's coming back to us in the
yes.
near future?
Yes, I think it's very clear.
Great. Okay. Was there any other Any other comments on this agenda item? No. Okay. Well, this is a great segue to agenda item number 7, which is future agenda items. I think we may have covered that in agenda item 6.4. Are there any other requests for future agenda items?
I mean, well, we already put it or 2 months ago, whenever we met. But I do still think it would be interesting and worthwhile to add more about pollinators or Bee City USA to our work plan. But I could see the argument going for that being like a 2021 item. So.
Yeah, and we had another suggestion. We had another commission ask about amendments to the work plan, and because of the end of term, you wouldn't be able to make the deadline to provide to bring the amendment to the council in time to get the amendment and then start to work on it. I believe the deadline to provide an amendment to council is October 9th. So it's just a timing issue, but keep track of it and definitely plan to include it in the next work plan.
Yeah, definitely bring it up. I've been noticing, I walk around, I see people have little signs like about protecting pollinators. So there's definitely an interest in this in the community. Okay, and so agenda item number 8 is next meeting, October 8th. Great. Okay, well, with that, I will adjourn the meeting. Thank you, commissioners. Thank you, public, and we'll see you next. Oh, Commissioner Martin, do you have something? No. Okay.
I think
he was waving.
He's waving goodbye.
Thank everybody.
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay.
Next month.
Bye-bye.
Bye.